Welcome to the second episode of Nightshade from Lake Avalon Entertainment. This audio drama podcast is an anthology of short stories that include science fiction, suspense, fantasy, psychological thrillers, and more. These stories are not necessarily connected, so start with any episode that captures your imagination. Make sure to check out lakeavalonentertainment.com for show notes, extras, information about our cast and crew, and our upcoming projects. Follow us on social media to stay up to date with the latest happenings at Lake Avalon Entertainment. Prepare yourself for a journey into a place where the lines of reality begin to blur with a dark and twisted dimension. Follow us deep into the cornfields of Candy Run, Kentucky, where an ancient secret is about to be unearthed by what could be best described as the All-American Family. Presenting Nightshade, Episode 2, The Strange Case of Reese Tulley.
When we first met Reese Tulley, Detective Dennison and me, I had just made detective, so it was essentially my first case. That was the spring of '85. Well, it was late spring, early summer. Anyway, I was all geared up to follow procedure, but there was nothing procedural about Tulley. Nothing.
Oh yes, the Tulley case. You know, it remains that one case that haunts me. Every cop has one. Tulley's mine. Candy Run only had a small town police force, no homicide division, no missing persons specialist, just a sheriff and a few deputies. So they called us in. I still shudder at the thought of going that deep south past the Ohio border. I'm originally from Michigan, grew up in Caulfield. We moved down south when I was offered a job working homicide in Lexington. Candy Run. I knew of the town's past, well, at least the rumors revolving around it. The old mines had built up quite a legendary reputation. I just figured that the folks there had too much time on their hands. Well, let's just say I don't look at the dark of night the same way anymore. I certainly don't tell my kids that there's nothing in it to be afraid of.
Sarah, Tulley's wife, had been frantic after Reese first disappeared and was convinced that he had been killed. Oh, she was a sweetheart. Reminded me of my little sister. Well, the local boys had been on the case for several days and turned nothing up. They probably wouldn't have contacted us at all if it weren't for Sarah's insistence and the fact that Tulley was so endured in the community. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with her, and the little ones were running around playing superheroes or something like that. She'd made us a pot of coffee, and she set it on the table and was afraid that the kids were going to knock it over.
Robbie, Teresa, I can't hear myself think. Please go outside so I can talk to the nice policewoman.
Is she trying to help you find Daddy?
Yes. Now, be good and play with your sister outside. I'm sorry. I'm just so frustrated.
No worries. You're cute. I can't wait to have some of my own one day. Now, Sarah, can you think of any reason why your husband might want to disappear?
What do you mean? Are you suggesting he wanted to leave me?
I'm not suggesting anything. I just have to ask. Sometimes couples have their problems, and one of them simply wants to get away. Sometimes they have secrets. Sometimes they have affairs.
That's not like my husband. Reese was never the cheating kind. He might have been misguided at times, but he wanted nothing but the best for all of us.
I understand, Mrs. Tulley. It is really hard to think about the fact that someone you love could have been hiding something from you. This sort of thing happens all the time.
No! No, not to me. I know my husband. How am I supposed to tell my little ones that their daddy is never coming home?
That was the first disappearance. Of course, Reese showed up about a week and a half later. Crawled into the freshwater cafe, a bloody mess, beaten black and blue. His lifetime best friend was there, Mr. Ronald Morse. He's the one who called the ambulance, which took Reese out of town to the nearest hospital. I interviewed Ronald that night. He said that Reese had looked as though he had been tied up to a tractor and dragged around a cornfield. Doctors pulled straw and hay from the tattered clothing of the victim. I probed Mr. Morse about his buddy's past.
Where do I start? Reese was an amazing shortstop. He never let a ball past him. Now, back in high school, everyone thought he was going to make it to the majors. Yeah, my best bud had it all. He graduated with honors and married the prettiest girl in school. Man, those were the days. If you would have told me back then that Reese Tulley would take a pass on moving to the big city so he could run his uncle's farm, I would have never believed you. Yep, his uncle left him that farm, when he passed away. I didn't even know he had an uncle, but apparently they had built up quite a bond in the last days of old Jasper's life. Yeah. That's when I first started seeing a change in Reese.
What'd he think of my ride, Ronald?
I'm not sure. What the heck is that? A tractor? Never did I think I would see you riding around on one of those things.
Purrs like a kitten now. Got her all fixed up. She got 4-wheel drive and 24 horsepower under the hood. If I really open her up, I can take her up to 20 miles an hour.
Careful now. You might get Sarah thinking you got yourself a little mistress out in the barn. Yeah, I'm just joking with you. What on earth has got you so interested in saving this old farm anyway? The place hasn't even grown weeds as long as I can remember.
I can save it, Ron. I know I can. My uncle had faith in me. It's like he said, the big city is no place to raise children. I want my kids to grow up with green grass and a big blue sky. This farm gives me something to pass on to the next generation. In the city, they'll bulldoze my life's work and put up a strip mall as soon as I take my last breath. Here, there will always be a part of me that lives on. Come on, jump on the back, and I'll show you all the progress I've made with my uncle's old equipment.
Yeah, Reese had been doing some mighty impressive work trying to save that old farm. Sarah, God bless her, she had been hard at work too. The two of them, they fertilized and tilted the soil, spent weeks getting all those seeds planted. Yeah, it was a real bummer when fall came around and there weren't nothing, and I mean nothing to show for it. They were mighty upset about it too. Had to take a loan out from one of those big city banks just to keep from going under.
Sheriff Conrad was less than cooperative when we approached him about the body they allegedly dragged out of the creek that winter. Of course, he sure was talkative about it years later in his memoir.
Having retired my shield a few years back, I can safely say that I've seen so many grisly things over the course of my career in law enforcement that most of it got lost in the shuffle. You just, you get numb to it. But in the case of Mr. Reese Tulley, yeah, I remember that case like it was yesterday. Yeah, we didn't know what to make of it. That was in the years before hell came a-walking. Years before those idiots went down into the old mines and found the tunnel to hell. Well before the Squire McCandless incident. I was just in my second year as sheriff. And at the time, we didn't see a lot of murders in Candy Run. It was a small town. Most of the folks here didn't even lock their doors back then. The whole town was in a stir when Mrs. Wishaw found that banker's body floating in the creek. And we were all in shock. He wasn't one of us. And if it hadn't been for a business card found in the nearby woods, we wouldn't have been able to identify the body at all. The only footprints we could find belonged to the banker himself. There were no gunshot wounds, no signs of trauma, no broken bones. Only a face full of terror that had been frozen in time. We tried to fingerprint the body, but the fingertips appeared to have been filed down so that there were no ridges to print. There were no teeth either. He was just a dead nobody in an expensive suit. Therefore, we sent the body back to the city to see what they could do with it. The results of the coroner's autopsy were inconclusive, and the cause of death was therefore listed an accidental drowning. But I just knew deep down, as I know now, it had something to do with the old Tulley place and its new heir.
And since we weren't getting much cooperation anywhere else, I went to the only one in town who liked to hear himself talk. I pressed Mr. Morse about it, and hard.
Yeah, that banker thing was wild. Now, there hadn't officially been a dead body found in Candy Run my whole life. Of course, I never told anyone what I found when I was just a youngin' and messing around in the old mines. Anyway, that's a story all to itself. But, yeah, that banker thing, damn, that scared some folks. But things calmed down when we found out that it was just a drowning. Yeah, he was probably just some drunk fella that got off in the boondocks and wandered into the woods and fell into the creek. Well, they say you can drown in 2 inches of water, and there's at least a foot out there. He probably just passed out in the wrong place. Either that or froze to death. The hunters found him, but everyone forgot about the whole thing as soon as spring came around. And then the Tulleys renewed their efforts on the farm, and wouldn't you believe it, it sprang to life. I was blown away by what I saw, all the crops they were hauling in all summer long. And that fall, biggest harvest I've ever laid eyes on. They put us all to shame. I guess that land had just been in need of some good old-fashioned TLC before it was going to produce. 1 year made all the difference in the world. Heck, Reese even had enough money left over to fill the whole living room with gifts for the kids at Christmas time. In fact, there were so many that they didn't even get a chance to open them all on Christmas Day.
Daddy, can I open this one? Oh, she's so pretty. You're the best, Daddy. I love you.
I want to open one too. You said I can open it. And you said you put the Christmas tree on.
Yes to the both of you. But you can't leave those wrappings lying around. And if I hear so much as one argument from the two of you over those video games, I'm taking it all away. You hear me?
Yes, Edward. Come on, let's go.
Here's the last one, Reese. Can I ask you something? What do you need all this salt for anyway? If your front walk is icy, I've got something that works a lot better.
I've got to have enough to make a perimeter around the house. I'm thinking I might need to surround the barn too.
For what? That just sounds like a mess. Sarah's gonna have a fit when she sees all this salt on the floor.
It's for her. It's for the kids. Can you think of a better way to keep it out?
Huh? Reese, you lost me.
Something evil is rising here, Ronald. I can feel it everywhere. My family's at stake.
With the dawn of redeeming grace, Christ the Savior is born.
Prior to the night Tulley showed back up in town, there wasn't much to go on, and, excuse me, the locals didn't have the resources necessary to handle a case like this one. According to Sheriff Conrad, we weren't ever going to find him if Tulley was claimed by Candy Rod's underbelly, whatever that meant. The doctors at the hospital said that he was delirious when he first arrived. He had lost a lot of blood and was quite dehydrated. They added that otherwise, the wounds seemed consistent with a tumble downhill, quote unquote. Our investigation of the Tulley residence and the surrounding properties, unfortunately, they didn't turn up any significant evidence.
It's always so hard when kids are involved in a case like this. Robbie and Teresa were clearly distraught at their father's erratic behavior. I made it a point to sit down with Sarah and the kids every time Mr. Tulley went missing and let them know this was not their fault. It was basically the same thing every time, though. Reese would disappear, everyone would look for him, and then, suddenly, he would reappear covered in blood. Can you imagine being his little girl? Or poor Robbie, who looked up to and admired his dad, and having seen this, he led us to the places where he'd been attacked, but there were never any footprints outside of his own. We never found a weapon, fingerprint, even a hair belonging to anyone else other than Reese Tulley. Detective Dennison thought that maybe it was some kind of elaborate insurance scheme. In my mind, Reese Tulley was clearly mentally ill. Whether he was aware of it or not, he was doing this to himself. That is where all the evidence pointed. It's not uncommon for serious mental illnesses to develop well into a person's adulthood. Poor Sarah. I could only imagine what was going on in her mind. Off the record, I had one more sit-down chat with her over coffee. This time I supplied coffee at the Clearwater Cafe. This time, I wasn't playing cop, though. I was just being a fellow woman, a friend.
I don't even know what to do anymore. Everything was going so well until that banker showed up dead. And even then, Reese seemed so happy. Until right around Christmas. Then he grew more and more paranoid. More and more distant. It was like he weren't Reese no more.
Sarah, has your husband ever seemed like someone else before last year?
No. Not that I can think of. Why?
Well, I'm not a professional, and this is just an educated guess, but I surmise that Reese has suffered a breakdown and didn't tell anyone that he was slipping until it was too late.
The other night, he just stared out the bedroom window. He kept checking on the kids, and I don't even think he came to bed that night. We haven't even made love in 6 months. Oh, dear God. I don't even know who my husband is anymore.
I think Sarah, I have seen this before. Your husband did something that has caused him to become overwhelmed by guilt. And to avoid facing it, he has created another personality to take responsibility for that ill deed. Deep down inside is locked the truth. I think it has something to do with that banker. And now, that other personality has become a threat to Reese, you, and the kids. Between us, and we're talking as girls right now, I fear for you, and Robbie, and Teresa, and even Reese.
I had had just about enough. Lock up the nutcase. That's what I told Deborah. It was just a matter of time before he was going to severely hurt or kill someone, you know? I remember what he told me that afternoon just before he... Deborah was in a frenzy because she went out to the farm to see how Sarah and the kids were doing, and, well, they were nowhere to be found. I located Reese out back in the fields. He was just standing there. Just standing there and staring out. I asked him where his wife and the kids were, you know? He responded with something cryptic, and it sent a shudder down my spine. God, why didn't I listen?
Do you believe there's a hell, Detective Dennison?
I don't know what I believe, Reese. I believe in the law. I believe that there's good and evil in the world. I believe that every man is rewarded for his good deeds, and that his sins will always catch up to him. I guess that's what I believe.
Yeah, I suppose they do. I suppose they do. Hell, Detective. God have mercy. It's coming for me.
We got the call just after midnight. I remember because I had just laid down to get some sleep. I was exhausted, and I'd hoped it would be one of the last times I'd have to sleep in that dingy motel room.
I'd never seen anything like it. We still couldn't locate Sarah and the kids, and we feared the worst. So we engaged in a 24-hour surveillance. Then, and don't ask me how, but he slipped out from underneath us yet again.
We had thought that Reese Tulley had just taken off like he'd done so many times before. But this time, we thought he was on the run for good, and that he had more blood on his hands than just his and the banker's.
As usual, we began a search of the area, expecting that we wouldn't find anything, you know? But I seriously thought he'd come crawling back in a couple days with his typical and very convenient story of having been taken away by these quote-unquote phantom assailants. Jeez. God, I've never been so wrong about anything.
It didn't take long till we found him. At least, what was left of him. A local farmer reported that there was a body on the road near his cornfield. Upon arrival, there was no doubt about it. There lay Reese Tulley. As was the routine, he had been severely beaten, but worse than ever before. His body sat in a pool of his own blood. And I had so believed until this point that his wounds had been self-inflicted. However, this time, I knew that could not be the case.
Yeah. His torso was cut open from the clavicle to the pelvis and stuffed with straw and hay. If it was a suicide, it was a pretty damn impressive one. He had been out with his buddy earlier that night, so we put Ronald in the hot seat.
I don't know. He said that he sent Sarah and the kids where no one, including him, would ever find or hurt them. I thought that a night out, just the two of us, would do him some good. So I took him to Harper's Billers to throw back a few cold ones, you know? Like the good old days. Everything seemed fine. Reese beat me at a game of 8-ball, and then I taught him a thing or two in a game of darts, and I think we even may have sang a round or two of karaoke. But I'm not so sure. All I know is he started to act like the old Reese again. Hell, it was such a good night. I mean, we may have put down a few too many beers, but look, all I remember is leaving and then driving about town and cutting up a bit, and then I must have blacked out. I didn't wake up again until y'all were poking me. I swear I have no idea how the hell I got out in the middle of that cornfield. I swear on everything that's good and holy.
We knew he was telling the truth. Ronald Morse was far from being a saint, but one thing he was not was a cold-blooded killer. We just were taken aback. I was speechless.
So we decided to drop into the Clearwater Cafe one last time. And though neither of us had much of an appetite, we ordered some coffee and a piece of pie, I believe. The gal behind the counter was nice enough and told us that she appreciated what we in uniform do for the community. Then, she overheard us talking about the case.
She said, "I've known Reese since he was just a little tag. Used to babysit for him. There's no way he would have done that to himself and wouldn't hurt a hair on his kids' heads. You want to know what I think? He made a deal with something, to save that farm. And it just couldn't pay up. So, it came for him."
It came for him. I don't think I ever felt so uncertain. No, that's not the right word. Damn right sick to my stomach, scared. And I felt right then and there. We had interviewed the folks who owned the cornfield next to the road on which Reese's body had been found. They were, how would I describe them?
Weird. More than weird. I felt like I was talking to someone who seemed to be there, but really wasn't. They just smiled and weren't rude or obnoxious. They would at least have been human, but they were like robots. Zombies. Anyway, they said that they didn't see or know anything. We left it at that. Now we just had to wait for the coroner. Not 2 hours went by, and the phone call came in.
Missing. Oh, man. You believe that? The corpse of Reese Tulley disappeared. A horror novelist couldn't have scripted it any better. So, Deborah and I decided to go back to the road and see if there was anything that we overlooked.
I had a really uneasy feeling about it. I just wanted to finalize the case and get the heck out of Candy Run. Plain and simple. It started to rain and wind was picking up something fierce. The blood stain on the road stood out like ruby on a bed of coal. What was it? What were we missing? Who could have tortured and killed this man the way that they did? And then, in the flashes of lightning, we saw him standing there.
A shadow more than a man. And he just stood there, looking at us. Finally, I said, "Hey, this is a crime scene." I think I walked maybe a couple steps in his direction. You mind if we ask you a few questions?
Whoosh! He took off. Man, we were on him like grape jelly on buttered toast, but he ducked into a cornfield. And I don't know if you've ever seen a field maze over 12 feet tall, but I'm only 5'4". I couldn't see a darn thing once I got into the thick of it.
I got him! Don't you worry about it!
Palmer, where are you? I can't see anything. I can't see 2 feet in front of me.
You! Underground, now! Who's gonna help me on the scoop?
Palmer, talk to me. Where are you? Palmer, please. I'm scared. Palmer! Palmer? Are you okay?
He said... He said... You believe in hell.
Who? I looked up. I saw what had frightened Detective Dennison. There he was, as bold and brazen as the midday sun. Can't be, I thought. But it was.
Yeah, it came for him. And it stuffed him and hung him on a pole in the middle of a Kentucky cornfield. Oh, to most, he would have just been a scarecrow. But to Lieutenant Paxton and I, we knew exactly what we were looking at. A man who bargained with the devil and couldn't pay up. I hightailed it back to Lexington as fast as I could and put in for a transfer back to my home state. Of course, both Deborah and I would get one last reminder about good old Reese before it was all over.
Some years later, Palmer and I both received a mysterious phone call. He was working as chief of police in Beaumont, Michigan, and I had moved out east with my husband. Anyway, on the same night, I'm not sure how far apart, we both got the same phone call. The voice was that of a male. He had a distinct southern accent. It was very low, very desperate. He said,
"It's cold where I'm at. And the birds have plucked out my eyes. Why? Why didn't you stop them?"
I quit the force shortly thereafter.
Join us again next month for another episode of Nightshade. Episode 2, The Strange Case of Reese Tulley, features the voices of Matt Grammatico as Reese Tulley, Heidi Lynn as Sarah Tulley, Robin Mudge as Lieutenant Deborah Paxton, and Casey Krause as Detective Palmer Dennison, Ronald Morse, and Sheriff Conrad. Please visit LakeAvalonEntertainment.com for more information on our cast and crew, as well as some fun extra content. Be sure to explore all of Lake Avalon while you are there. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Nightshade on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. Leave us a like, a comment, or review to help us to reach even more podcast lovers like you. Can't find us in your favorite place for podcasts? Email Robin Mudge at lakeavalonentertainment.com or interact with us on social media and let us know. For more information on our upcoming projects, email Casey Krause at Lake Avalon Entertainment. That's KACEEKRAUSE at lakeavalonentertainment.com. Thank you so much for listening, and may your life be far from normal.